it kept, I wasn't trying to think about it, but it kept on coming up during the week. It just sort of happened. My mind would just sort of go to this koan, which I've studied many times, but I just keep on, it sort of affirmed to me how often I run into experiences that feel close, and that feel close that I can't necessarily express. And just how often that happens. Closeness with a person, closeness with a situation, just something really beautiful, but not expressible so readily. And it just, I feel like I was sort of reaffirmed in that experience. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I can relate. Ron or Andrea, do you want to, did anything come up?
Well, what came up to me for just today was thinking about it for this question, that the word wandering really works better for me than the word pilgrimage, because I have done wandering, I haven't done a pilgrimage. And wandering just seems more open-ended and accessible to everybody than going on a pilgrimage. And what it reminded me of was, when I wandered, when I was much younger, and the feeling of just, partly it was just the adventure of it, but also just not knowing what was going to happen next. And that can be very stimulating. You can get a little drunk on that, you can get obsessed with it, but the state of mind where you really don't know, and you have to find your comfort level in every new situation. So I remembered that. And it also reminded me of what Jim Jarmusch said, who's the film director who's done, I really like his movies. Stranger Than Paradise, Broken Flowers, and there's a few others that are really quite good, I think. Down by Law. And he said when he wants to think about an idea for a new movie, he moves to a foreign city where he doesn't know the language and just wanders around. And not knowing the language and being out of touch with the culture opens up his creativity for him. So that kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah.
And maybe a different version. This just came to me, but it was an experience that happened maybe last week. I've been a physician, where most of my examples come from. If it's not dogs, I've been a physician for a really long time, and I have a certain level of expertise and effort. And sometimes I get in the of acting from that place. But my work these days is really about meeting people where they are. And it happened again that when I could sit down with someone who's struggling with a really serious illness, and they could present what they were going through, and I could not know. I could just say the big catchword in our specialty is, tell me more. Tell me more, from a completely open place of not having any idea what or what the answer was to what needed to happen. That there's this really magical dropping into a really intimate space, and stories just up and lead someplace that neither the person nor I could have anticipated about what's really important to them. Just a few simple kind of cues based on real curiosity about what they're saying. So that was a reminder of Koan in real time.
That's great. Okay, if no one else wants to sort of return to that one, we'll move on to the next one. This one is called, variously, Master Ma is ill, or Master, he's either called Master Ba or Master Ma, but we'll try to stick with Master Ba, I guess. And this is a very short koan, and there are several, I'd say many really, very short 1 or 2 sentence koans in this collection of 100 koans. And they tend to be very spare and kind of condensed. So this won't be the only opportunity to hear this koan or talk about it tonight, but I thought we would just try taking a moment of quiet. And then I've asked Ron to read it. And then if I could ask you to just see if anything pops into your mind, if, just like without it being particularly thought through or, I know some of you know this koan very well and some of you have never heard it, but just if anything comes to you, just sort of spontaneously, we could see and maybe share that before we go on. So let's just take a minute, Ron, and then you can just read it. It's very short.
Okay, this is from the Yamada version, which we're mostly relating to during the class. Great Master Ba was seriously ill. The temple steward asked him, "Master, how are you feeling these days?" Great Master said, "Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha." And as our want, I can read it one more time since it's so short. Just
Okay.
be a second. Great Master Ba was seriously ill. The temple steward asked him, "Master, how are you feeling these days?" Great Master said, "Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha."
Well, is anyone willing to take a stab at that?
I will. I've never heard this koan before. But the first thing that just struck me is just the cycle of life. This the sun and the moon and the cycle of life. And he's seriously ill and he's about to die and he's alive. And the second thing is the sun, which is a source of light and energy. And then the moon, which is reflected. So I just feel like he knew he's dying the next day and but still going. This is how, that's
Great. Kabir? Kabir?
Let him know about muting.
Oh, you're muted, I think. Oh, maybe you're having trouble.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's okay.
So first time I heard this koan, Sojin was talking about, some days you're feeling good, sometimes you're feeling bad. So I kind of went in when Ron was reading with that kind of, trying to clear that as much as I could. And what came to my mind was causes and conditions. We don't know how we're going to feel that particular because there's so much involved, we have our own stuff going on inside of us, and there's the environmental stuff, and then you got the karma going at the same time. So it just depends. So
Great.
that's what came up for me.
Nice. Good. Nathan?
I was thinking about one of Suzuki Roshi's essays where he takes issue with a translation of patience, and says that he prefers the word abiding, I think, rather than patience. Maybe I'm misremembering it, but I was thinking about abiding, abiding in the sun, abiding in the moon, and I recently read Reb Anderson's book on the precepts, being upright, and I think that one of the things I took away from that was something like abiding. That being upright is abiding, being with what is, without judgment, with patience.
Yeah, I mean, that rings for me too. In this one, it's really about, as Suzuki Roshi said, things as they is. That's definitely an aspect of it for me. Yeah. Karen? Oh, Pacia.
Hi. Yeah, I was thinking about it the same as Lynn. I was thinking about, sun is the generator of warmth and light and energy, and moon is the reflection of that. And the only other part that I wanted to add was that the moon is itself empty of that. And so I was thinking about what that would feel like to be in the middle of both of that, and being aware of both of that at the same time.
Yeah, a word I think of in this one is balance for some reason.
Equanimity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also kind of a balance between, the relative or the two and the one, just like a perfect balance. Yeah. Ross?
Thank you. That actually was what I was going to say, which is often I think about things dualistically, and that Master Ma says these two things, but it's one person. And I began thinking about Sojin and his youth and the pictures from his younger days that we've seen in the memorials and whatnot, and had all this life in front of him, so to speak. And then in his last year or two, when he was diagnosed, he spoke very frankly about his death, and that it was just this transformation. And so for me, the Master Ma's response is this one person that is kind of, in just a few words, expressing the arc of his life and our life, which for me is very calming and comforting, especially thinking about how Sojin met his imminent transformation. So with such equanimity and just matter of factness, like sun-faced, moon-faced. It was never that, oh my God, what's going to happen to me, or I'm missing my youth and all the rest of that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Nathan Britton, I think you had a question.
I think he asked the question. I think we're on to
Did he?
Ken.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
One thing that just occurred to me now, when we say sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha, I always was sort of picturing a Buddha, that was round and had, the sun face was maybe brighter and the moon face was a little different color or something like this. But it occurs to me, I think those are the names of those Buddhas in a sutra. But it's kind of odd to have your name be something face. And I was thinking, in one of my book groups, we're reading the Greek tragedies, where, as you probably know, in the Greek tragedies, every actor was masked, or they might just hold up a mask in front of their face, and they're kind of off in a distance. So, where we, this made a big distinction, like a person is speaking, but you're looking there, and it's just this mask speaking. You don't see the person's head.
Mhm.
And so this is something I wouldn't have expected of a Buddha. Like, you don't think of Buddhas as putting on different personalities or something. Maybe bodhisattvas do. But I don't know where I'm going with this at all. It's just that it struck me as odd that these people, they're not called the sun Buddha and the moon Buddha, they're sun-faced Buddha and moon-faced Buddha.
Yeah.
So it's
That's
like, then that maybe makes you think of two sides of one coin, something like that. It makes it seem like the real Buddha isn't the face. I mean, maybe it's the same Buddha, and we're looking, depending on what side we're looking at, we're seeing a sun face, and then if we go around, we're seeing a moon face. Again, I don't know where that's going, but I had never thought of that before.
Two sides, yeah. Pauline?
I was, this time around, I was thinking about the role of time in this koan, that I guess in the, mythology, it's drawing from the sun-faced Buddha is an entity that lasts for thousands of years, and the moon-faced Buddha is very brief. So it makes me think of impermanence and how, a lot of grief and suffering can come out of making the mistake of assuming that because something lasts for a long time, it is in fact permanent, when it's not, whether it's one's health, one's life, or political systems, planets, whatever. The sun-faced Buddha is not actually a different class of being than the moon-faced Buddha. It's just scaled differently.
Right. Good, nice, yeah. Jeff?
Simply, I thought of it as the absolute and the relative.
Mhm.
The sun is the light, and everything showing up in the relative world, and the moon is the dark, where everything is same.
Good. That's very succinct. Ron or Andrea, do you want to chime in? Or?
When I first read it, I thought, well, it's kind of like Sojin's responding to conditions. Whatever the conditions are, that's okay. But then as I read the commentary, everybody was just flipping out about how magnificent and big this is. And I thought, why are they making such a fuss about it? And then I realized that they're pointing at the non-duality of it. And that's why they're saying it's such a powerful case. And that Master Ba doesn't matter which one it is. Each one is fine, and they're both Buddhas. In other words, he's in the Buddha realm no matter what happens. Doesn't matter what the circumstances are. He's in that realm of letting go of himself and just being able to participate in what's ever happening. So I sort of reading the commentary spurred me to get bigger in the way I was seeing it.
Well, Andrew, do you want to go, or should we let Joel go and then come back to you? Is that okay?
Your call sounds great to me.
Okay, Joel, why don't you go ahead? Sue, what happened to you?
What happened to me is I thought of Suzuki Roshi. I had a cassette of Suzuki Roshi talking about this koan, and it was wonderful. I think he was very ill, I think it was one of the last talks, and it's been collected, I think, in books, but this was the cassette, dating me, of actually him talking, and it was very moving. And one of the things was he would, with his stick, I guess, hit moon face Buddha, sun face Buddha, and it was obvious that either one was okay, and that he was really taking care of his students, and he was taking care of them in a very tough way. I
Mhm.
mean, he was saying something like, "It's okay. If it's not okay for you, you're not a student of the Buddha.
Right.
It's
Well,
perfectly okay."
Joel, I just wanted to say, you had brought up the book by Gary Wicks, and
Uh-huh.
he actually quotes Suzuki Roshi,
Wow.
and we're going to read that at the end.
Oh,
So
cool.
just want to
Okay.
let you know that. And it's not exactly the one you're talking about, but he really talked about that koan a lot when he was dying. So there's several good quotes, and we'll read one of them.
Yeah, he's amazing. Thanks.
Andrea, did you want to?
Well, Sue O had her hand up, but she seems to have disappeared. I don't know if she's trying to get back in. Or
I
not.
can speak again. Thank you. So I just looked at something online because I was not connecting with this verse at all. And I think I'm just so sleepy, I'm not relating. But something caught my eye. The sun-faced Buddha representing longevity, eternal light, and the moon-faced Buddha living one day, like the day fly, it has a day of life. And I don't have any great insight about this, but I do notice that I don't know what that means. I just
We'll talk a
don't.
little bit more about that, but that is really a kind of key point, I think, about this koan. So,
Well, I'm really moved by a lot of the comments that went on, and I want to build on something that a couple of people have said, including Ron. It's in the pointer as well, and that has to do with what's the sun face Buddha and what's the moon face. Are they a cycle, a change, one thing in another, or? And I'm going to tell it in a story because it was right in my face this morning when I went to make a home visit. There's a woman who's been a runner and really proud of being athletic. She's someone who has been a very important part of who she thinks she is, and a lot of the rest of the way she sees her life as being very limited and not very simple. But even when
Andrea, I'm going to just interrupt you a minute and remind you that if you move around a lot, you will break up. So you have to be very still when you talk.
Okay, it's very hard.
I know.
So she has a very aggressive brain tumor, and even in the first years of her, she could even walk from the BART station way to where she was getting treatment home again, and she was so proud of that. Now she's at the very end of her life and be walking.
Oh, we lost you, Andrea. We'll have to wait to hear the end of that story. Andrea, you need to go out and come back in, I think. Oh, well, maybe we'll take this moment and move on to the instruction or the introduction. And we haven't been doing this so much with the other koans, but it was a request, so we're gonna do it for this one. And I particularly like or am intrigued by the first line of this introduction. So I'm going to read that and just sort of, again, put that out as sort of a question. So the first line of it is, practicing Zen apart from mind and consciousness, still there is this. And I'll just say that my understanding of practicing Zen apart from mind and consciousness is, kind of like, we know we're impermanent. We know, that, we know about emptiness, and we know, about the illusion of self. And we even experience that sometimes, perhaps. But still, there is this, and sort of, I never really noticed this, and I know this Koan well, but like, what is the this, and it seems to me so unique for all of us. We're all so different, and we all have such different selves, and we all know better, and we still have them. So I just wondered if anybody kind of wanted to talk about what do you think this is, or what he means by that. I'll read it one more time. Practicing Zen apart from mind and consciousness, still there is this. Ron?
I've already thought about this, so that's why I can talk about this, but whether it's accurate or not, I don't know. I think he's talking about letting go of self. Still there is this. And when we face life and death, we have to basically let go of ourselves if we want to be a real part of it and not be separate from it. That's my guess. When I die, I'll let you know. But still there's this holding on to our life because of me. I want to protect me. That's what I think this is.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I just wonder, like, there's so much to wonder about that. When we totally understand that it's an illusion, why is there still this? I mean,
because it's so instinctual. It's just for self-protective. It's built in. It's all animals are like this too.
I don't disagree, but it's a mystery still.
Yeah.
Karen?
I'm having trouble with the first part of the sentence, like practicing Zen apart from mind and consciousness, or I don't even understand quite what that means. So if somebody has a thought of that, that's my question. But what I think that this is not different from what Ron said, but I also think of it as this that is like this moment, or this very moment, this very reality. But when I think of it being like this attachment to self, I don't think of that as being apart from Buddha.
Yeah. Lynn? Oh, you're muted.
The first thing that comes to me when I hear the stillness is just suchness. That's the thing, suchness, and meaning life. Suchness and life. That's what I feel. And also, I had rolling over from before about the time aspect with moon. And I don't know if as a woman I feel differently, because I don't see it as a one-day thing. You have it's very much a cycle, as Andrea is letting, it changes like the moon and with the moon, but it's ongoing and it brings life. So there's this connection between the moon and the sun and the origination of life and the reflection on life and research.
Pacia?
I was happy to read in the commentary that they brought up the practice of mu. I first came across that a number of years ago through a painting I was working on, and I think that first part of it, I don't remember, I don't have it right in front of me, but apart from or outside of mind and consciousness, which is mostly what's going on in my daily life. And when I have had moments of even having the experience of being outside of that, I think that word mu, or the practice of mu, of nothingness, is that place.
I
And
see.
so the commentary mentioned that there. And also, as Lynn said, I think that this is the suchness, just the what is. Also, I think that way too.
Interesting. Yeah. All right, Sue.
Yeah, well, I'm glad Andrea's back. I really relate to the phrase a little farther down that said, "This is too lofty." I like that because that's the only part that I agree with at this point. And then it gets down to talking about Tathagata Chan, or Zen, I guess. And I remember Sojin talking about just this, talking about Suzuki Roshi saying that just this, and somehow beyond mind, intellect, and consciousness, there is still this. And I can somewhat relate to that, beyond my opinions, beyond my thoughts, beyond what I know. There's this suchness. What is that essence? And that's as far as I can take this. Thank you.
Pretty far. Thank you. Andrea, did you want to?
Yes, I'm going to try and talk again. Yes, I wanted to bridge back to something that Lynn said about life, and whoever spoke right after Lynn also, those both connected with the kind of end of my story, which was this. This very disabled person was fully alive. She brought everything from her life into that moment without any ideas, really. Well, I can't say that for her, but in that moment, she was fully functioning with everything that she had been in the midst of everything she was losing. In that moment, she was bringing everything to bear, and that, I think, was an embodiment of what this means. Apart from any ideas, she was just showing up to what it was, and it included everything.
Thanks. Yeah. So Kabir, if I think we're kind of, getting a little behind of our schedule. So if you could just say quickly what you have to say, and we'll take a word from Ken and then go on.
Sure. Coming down the mountain, or the ox herding story where, at the end it comes home. So, just coming back to this moment, somebody's got to wash the dishes. So that's what came to me.
Thank you. Ken?
Yeah, apropos of this, in the Tao Te Ching, which I've been reading recently, there are several passages that speak of this. And in each case, it's kind of mysterious, but I think it may be doing the same thing. Here's one thing. It's talking about the Tao, and it says, there is certainty in it. From long ago till now, it has kept its name. So it saw the beginning of everything. How do I know anything about the beginning? By this. And here's another one.
Wait, no, I think we're going to move on.
Okay.
If you don't mind, yeah. Alan?
I think it's useful for us to resist the tendency to overanalyze this koan, which I think is very easy to do, and it sort of invites it, the overanalyzing. And I think my first inclination on this is to think, sometimes we feel like our life is moon-faced Buddha, and sometimes that our life is on the waning side, on the dark side, and sometimes we feel like it's sun-faced Buddha, and sometimes we feel like that. And I think that what Matsu was saying was that I feel both, and here I am. And then he died. So I guess my tendency is to take this in a simpler way and not to overanalyze it.
Yeah.
I think it's good for us to resist that and just try to think of it in terms of our own lives and how we feel.
I don't disagree with that, but since I've known this koan a long time, I realize that at different points in my life, I actually, see it differently. Not that I analyze it in many ways, but over time, it can be sort of different at different times, although I totally agree with what you're saying. So should we just go on through the rest of the verse because I'm sorry, Ross.
No need to apologize. I'm just curious about the comment you just made. Do you feel that your analytical study of the koan kind of precipitated your understanding as life unfolded, or it just kind of happened and then you reflect on the analysis?
I think kind of both, actually. But I do think really with all of these koans that, and I'm sure you know this, that they sort of filter through our lives and sort of what's going on in our lives, or even what we're reading. Supposing, we're involved in reading, say, the Shin Chin Ming or something, then we start to see the koans in a way that we might not have seen them if we were in a different place, or reading different things, or thinking about different things, or having different life experiences. I mean, if our health was good, it might be different. If our health was not good, it might be different. So I just think it can be very malleable for me, I think.
I think that's a good place to begin with your life and how you feel.
Yeah.
That's a really creative way to work with it, rather than just trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
I so agree with that. I feel like the koans just keep showing themselves up in my life. I notice them speaking to me in my daily activity. I go, oh, that's Tail of the Ox. Oh, that's Master Ma talking to me in this moment.
Yeah. So Andrea, we were going to let you talk about the next two lines. Are you up for that?
Yeah. Are you okay with the time, Ellen? And I
think we're okay with the time. We'll just get as far as we get.
Okay.
Well, I would say don't take forever.
I don't intend to. So let me read the next one line, because they actually don't really go as well together as they seemed in the moment.
Yeah.
So this bridges with the first one, as Sue said, learning beyond the paths of the ordinary and the holy. It is already too lofty. So I really love this one. Normally I think the usual way of thinking of it is the holy is outside of ourselves. We start as ordinary people, and we yearn to be holy, to be actualized, to have some kind of insight. And we think that people who are holy are above us in some way. But actually, you couldn't actually touch holiness unless you were ordinary. Holiness does not exist without the ordinary. And in fact, it's the ordinary that seeks the holy. So what's inside and what's outside, they don't exist without one and the other. So to think that they're separate elevates holiness, and you lose it, because that's not what holiness is. It's complete. It has everything in it. So it's too lofty to think as holy as being above. Holy is right here. Holy is this, and ordinary is this. So maybe that's enough.
Yeah, I think that's enough. Let's just keep on going, and if somebody wants to circle back and say something about these, they're welcome to.
So I also took the next line as we were talking yesterday, because I love this line too, and I thought it meant something different than Yamada Koan. So I'm going to tell you both. In the commentary, this line, the scarlet furnace sends out barred balls of iron. What Yamada says is that the scarlet furnace is Master Ma, or Master Ba. He's the fire. He's the engine for people's understanding. and the balls of iron are that, ugh. So you remember being in gym class when you were young and maybe the teacher had this great big, really heavy ball that they threw at you. So you'd have to find your posture and your balance in order to, he's throwing that out, except it's too heavy and it's too hot for you to handle. So that, I mean, that seems pretty straightforward. That's what this koan is. It's a big, heavy load. And maybe that's the usual way of saying this, and that's maybe the right way. But the way it appealed to me as I was reading this and thinking about the lines before, the scarlet furnace is my life. The scarlet furnace is the heat and the fire and the passion and the whatever of my life that fuels me. And my life also contains all of these difficulties. Those are the big, heavy balls. So I'm constantly trying to find my way through the difficulties with the passion or the sun-faced, the energy of my life.
Thank you. Does anybody want to comment on either of those lines before we go on? And Ron,
Especially people who haven't spoken, maybe?
Ron, why don't you go on with the next two and we can still
Okay.
talk about these.
First, I just want to mention this instruction or the introduction is by Wansong. Wansong was a comment. He does a commentary in the Book of Serenity to all these cases. So this is by Wansong, although the case is not by Wansong. But this introduction is definitely by Wansong, and his personality. I won't go into it now, but I really like his personality. It's kind of, he's very buoyant and skeptical and devoted and questioning, and he's very sharp. So I always kind of have Wansong's temperament in the background when I read this instruction, or we can call it the introduction. So even someone with a sword-like tongue and spear-like lips can hardly open his mouth. Now, even somebody who's really good with words, they're just eloquent. When they're at this level of going beyond their usual thinking mind and their usual emotionality, and when they're having to deal with, when you can't rely on your thought process and your conceptual process, the words don't work. Even somebody who's eloquent, your words don't work. And then, who does not run afoul of the sword? I will cite an example. Look, so, question is, what's the sword? And I think that the sword is kind of like, the sword is what we feel is threatening our ego. So I don't feel so confident about this one. That's just my take on it. Who does not run foul of the point of the sword? In other words, we don't like it when our ego is challenged really deeply. We can all give lip service to, oh, this is my ego, but really deeply, we're really attached to our sense of self and our protection of ourselves. So that's the point of the sword, is that threat to ourself of letting go of our whole conception of who we are and what we are and so forth. And then we're going to go into the example. So I think that's what Master Ba is doing here in this example. And it's just a couple of lines.
Does anybody want to say anything about any of those lines, or shall we just move on? Okay, we're going to move on. So now I'm going to talk a little bit, give you a little bit of background on the teacher and the sort of backstory of the sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha really just, I mean, because it's just sort of part of this koan, and you can sort of hold it as lightly or as not lightly as you want to, but it's just sort of information about this koan, sort of the backstory. So the first thing I want to say is that all of these koans are about certain teachers, or maybe two monks or teachers, and they tend to kind of have the flavor of that teacher. And so whenever anybody comments on this koan, they often talk about Master Ba, and he was really one of the very early Zen teachers. He lived, he was born in the early 8th century, so 709 he was born. And that's 150 years before Dizang, who was the central character in the other two koans we've looked at. So as Ken sort of was almost mentioning, that this is, very related, I think, to Taoism, or more related to the evolution of Chan Buddhism from Taoism. And what people always say about him was that he was in his prime extremely big and very robust, and sort of intimidatingly large. He was also like very sort of spontaneous and maybe gruff, and kind of initiated, really maybe one of the first teachers or recorded teachers who, used his staff to hit people to wake them up or make them enlightened or something. He was kind of a forefather or direct ancestor to the Rinzai school, more than sort of our branch, which is the Soto school. That sort of very sort of direct and firm way of teaching is a little bit part of that lineage, more than this one, perhaps. And the other thing is that he had a large number of disciples who all became sort of teachers after him. So he was very influential. And so the sort of the backstory on the sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha, which people have brought up, is that at the time that he lived, there was a sutra called the Sutra of 3,000 Names of Buddha, which was kind of a list of theoretically all the Buddhas going back millions of kalpas. And it was kind of a popular book, actually. And it was, people read it and knew about it, and I don't know if they memorized it or whatever. But the sun-faced Buddha was listed in that book. And, what was listed about him was that he lived for 1,800 years. That number varies, but about 1,800 years. And then the moon-faced Buddha lived 24 hours, just for one day and one night. So, you could say the sun-faced Buddha had a unusually long life, and the moon-faced Buddha very short. So I want to go on from here. As I said, this is just a very short koan. It's 2 sentences, and but like many koans, it came from a longer story, and many koans did, that they were kind of condensed down. So they seem extremely sort of condensed and spare, but they really came from stories that were longer. So I've asked Andrea, assuming her internet is working, to read a longer version, just to see if it, gives you any other thoughts about the koan. So this is from a book called Zen's Chinese Heritage.
The master had 139 disciples, each becoming a spiritual master in a different place, where each of them ceaselessly conveyed the teaching. In the first month, of the year 788, the master climbed Shinmen Mountain in Yangshan. There, as he was walking in the woods, he saw a flat spot in a cave and said to his attendant, "This ruined old body of mine will return to the ground next month." These words came to pass. He subsequently became ill. The temple director asked him, "How's the master's honored condition been lately?" Master Ma said, "Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha." On the first day of the second lunar month, the master bathed, sat in the cross-leg position, and passed away. During the Yan-He era, 806 to 20, he received the posthumous name Daiji, Great Stillness. His stupa is named Majestic and Imposing.
So, that's some information that I told you, and also sort of a different story a little bit. And, I'm just sort of curious if that, made you see anything differently, or a lot has been said, but if just, if it changed the way you saw it, or if you have any other thoughts. Pacia?
Just this. How does one know that one is going to die? It's really quite amazing awareness.
Andrea, maybe you could answer that.
I don't have a dharmic answer for that. I just know that people do.
Lynn, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just, there are two things that Suzuki Roshi said. I never heard him speak to this koan, but when I read the instruction with that in mind, oh, my battery's low. I just see this practicing suchness, and then the quote from Suzuki Roshi about what we're doing is so important and we can't take ourselves seriously, which is the next part about the order and the holy and too lofty. And then what he said, or Sojin said, about life is getting into a sailboat going out to sea that's going to sink. It's going to sink. So I saw this, who doesn't run foul of the sword, that, well, we all die. And that this was all about this, our life working and our death and becoming Buddha nature, purified 100 times. That's
Karen?
I just had a funny thought when you were describing Master, I call him Master Ma. In the Chinese, many of you know Ma means horse, and that he was known as the horse-faced master. So I kind of thought that his response might have been a play on his own nickname.
That's funny. Yeah. There's another quote, and this is actually, oh, sorry, Daniel, why don't you chime in?
Yeah, that idea of going from horse-faced Buddha, from moon-faced Buddha, from sun-faced Buddha, like all these historical Buddha, like the way that story was just told and how it's like great stillness makes me think of like Buddha is like not being born, like always, like it's just Buddha like in the earth, the whole like yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say something about Karen's comment, which there's a line or sort of a prediction that Wei Neng made. So Wei Neng was our sixth patriarch, a very famous teacher in our limited lineage. And he was speaking to the teacher of Master Ba, and he made a prediction, and the prediction was, hereafter, from the area to which you will go, a horse will come and trample everyone in the world to death.
Can you say that again?
Yeah. Hereafter, from the area to which you will go, so he's going to teach somewhere else, a horse will come and trample everyone in the world to death. And, I'll just say that there's a lot of imagery in Zen about, or maybe in Zen, about, kind of dead trees. And, so it's the idea of like, sort of trampling on all your conceptions, sort of killing all your conceptions, I think is the idea of that. But other people could have other ideas. Your concepts are sort of destroyed. Well, if anybody else wants to say anything about anything, this would be a good moment before we move on to the verse.
Can I say something as a big picture thing, which is I think in some ways we've been more overtly talking about ideas than experiences this week, based on some feedback, and that can lead to the idea perhaps that some people who aren't oriented that way have nothing to contribute. But I really want to encourage you to talk just about how this is landing on you. What comes up for you when you hear these lines? Whatever your experience is valid. That's your relationship with the koan now. So for those of you who haven't been participating, or even those who have, please join in if you're inclined.
Ron?
I just, in a different tack, just want to say I really enjoy the fact when you read the story of Master Ma, the original situation that prompted him to say that most of the koans that so far that I'm aware of, I'm assuming, I don't know for sure, have the same background. In other words, they actually happened. There wasn't something that somebody sat down and wrote it out and made it up. It actually happened, and then it got written down and passed on and probably got embellished and polished. You can't help that. And then, 300 or 400 years later, it shows up in the Book of Serenity. So just that kind of connection I really enjoy that kind of handing down a story and then studying the story later. But the story actually had a natural beginning to it. It wasn't just something somebody concocted.
Right. Bud?
Yeah, this koan has been kind of a thorn in my side for a long, long time. And I really appreciated Yamada's comment that he didn't see this as a great teaching to the steward. so much as just something that popped out of his mind out of his mouth at that moment. And, I keep seeing all these different explanations of the source of these phrases, these names, and it just doesn't seem to help me at all. But, it's always kind of times of stress that this koan pops into mind. And I have no understanding of why that is.
Well, explain that a little bit more.
Well, I'm not sure that I can.
To me, I agree with that. It does pop into my mind too at those times. But for me, it's really like, it is like sometimes things are one way and sometimes they're like this. And that's all. But your experience could be different than that. And it reminds me of like, when you're cold, be cold. When you're hot, be hot.
The other thing that is, just in terms of this that we're talking about now and the source of this, and Ken's comment about being sort of unusual to see the word face as part of a Buddha's name. And I'd be curious to know if that's unusual in this compilation of names too. Is there something special about these two names that set it apart for Master Ma from all those other thousands of names?
Well, that's an interesting comment because I've heard several people talk about this sutra, and I've never heard anybody who's seen it. So I'm not sure we will get that piece of information. Julianne?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for bringing up the line about this, just because it wasn't until you mentioned it that it seemed like really the key to so much about this koan, because I thought about it in terms of times when I've been really sick, or like I've just felt I don't know, maybe outside myself in a way. If someone had asked me how I was feeling at that time, I think I probably would have said something like what Master Ma has said, just in a very sarcastic way, like, just kind of like, yeah, things are good, things are bad, sometimes things are good, sometimes things are bad, but just feel very sarcastic about it. But the whole concept of this, it kind of takes it beyond that for me. So I just felt like all of a sudden it just seemed to make sense that sometimes there are times in your life when when your feeling goes beyond the good and the bad, or the dark and the light, and there's still something that persists beyond that. So.
Nicely said. Carol?
Well, this is a little bit like what Julianne was saying. It makes me think of, that saying, every day is a good day. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes you don't feel so good, but it's still a good day. Just remembering that. Or maybe, it's like just you've got the good sun face going on, a great day. And, just level that out. It's a good day. Or level out when it's not such a great day. It's still a good day. And that's sort of underneath. I think as a practitioner, you kind of know that. You just always know that. It's a good day. To remind yourself of that.
Ron, did you want to say something?
Short. I had a college roommate who had a saying, sometimes you get the bear and sometimes the bear gets you.
And I just want to say, and this is in relation to what Carol said, but also what Bud said, is I think of this koan very often also, but almost never when I'm really feeling good. Dean?
I think when I read it, it feels very peaceful to me at this point. And when I think about it, it makes me similar to what a lot of other people have said, but it makes me think about living and dying, and every moment I'm living and that same moment I'm dying. It's all happening. Every thought is living and then it dies, and my body is living and it's dying, and it feels like a great deal of equanimity to me. And sort of this sort of sensation, it feels peaceful to me.
It's really nice. Thank you. It's tempting to sit with that piece for a minute, but maybe we'll just go through the verse. We don't have a lot of time, but we could just take a look at it. So the verse starts out with two lines that I'll talk about for a minute. The two lines are sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha, stars shoot, thunder peals. And, that's fairly straightforward, but I think of that as, that this is like stars shoot and thunder peals. It's like it happens and it's over. If you miss it, you miss it. It's not, it doesn't stay. And I sometimes feel that way with this koan, like I get it, I don't get it, I get it, I don't get it. That it's just for a moment that it feels clear to me. That happens with a lot of koans, but and then also that those things are big, star shooting and thunder pealing are like big natural events. And it sort of adds weight to this very short, very simple couple of words, really. So I will pass the mirror and the ball on to Andrea.
Thanks. So the mirror renders images without ego, and a base in the ball rules of itself. I love both of these lines. So the mirror kind of is like our sense consciousnesses, just pure seeing, pure hearing, pure tasting, pure touching. There's no conception about what those experiences are. Nothing overlies it. It just is. So the ego is what takes those experiences and makes it into something. But here, this is pointing at just receiving the pure experience. If you can't walk, you can't walk. If you're full of life, you're full of life. There's no value placed on it. It just is what it is. And when you're like that, I think is what the next line's about. The base in the ball rolls of itself. Sometimes that's said as a perfectly round pearl rolls infinitely around a bowl that has absolutely no friction. So it keeps whatever the first impulse to get it going was, keeps it going. And you could say that's kind of like human life. It just, and I It's my clinical experience. Life just keeps going. At some point it stops. But another side of this is none of us is a perfectly round ball. And so what does this mean for us? So I'll just leave that as your own question about it. But somehow,
let's take some comments. These are really beautiful lines, I think, too. I really like them as well. If anybody has a response or a thought about them, or just any expression. Jeff?
So with a couple of these lines, there's something that I think, and it has to do. I'm going to torture this a little bit. When you think about what the masters did back in the day, is they would explain something and something would happen. Somebody's standing in a field, somebody's going somewhere, whatever. Then somebody says something, and then what the master does is he demonstrates the Dharma. It's something experiential. And this is sort of what this means to me. I mean, Andrew, when you talk about the ball rolling, it's not because I should or shouldn't be perfectly round and keep on rolling. It's because the experience keeps unfolding and keeps revealing itself. And that's, for me, is where the heart of this meaning is. Who am I, and what will I do next? What is just this? Where do I find myself, and how is that for me? How do I find myself just in this moment, and how do I move forward into the next moment? What do I carry from the previous moment? Hopefully nothing, but that's rarely true. So before I go on too long, it's an experiential thing for me.
That's nice. I like it. Sue?
Thumbs up. That's all.
Oh, I see. Okay. Ron, do you want to say anything about these lines?
Yeah, the ball rolling of itself, to me, is like there's no resistance. There's no friction, a resistance to what's happening. It just moves it just moves. It doesn't get stuck someplace. And we get stuck someplace because we're attached to this, we're attached to that, so we want to get stuck there. But this ball just keeps on, just rolls.
Yeah, I feel like the mirror is the same. It's just like, sort of the same of not getting stuck. It's like just reflects and doesn't grasp.
Yeah. Imagine if you went to, in the old playland at the beach and they had these curvy mirrors. What if there was a mirror that showed you your real self?
Didn't they?
No.
Isn't that Zazen?
Theoretically, yeah. Right. That's true. Blake, say more. By the way, Blake's done a great job of kind of maneuvering so that we can all hear each other over and over again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't have anything more to say on that. Or
No, Blake, I
tangentially.
actually missed what you said. So could you say it again?
Well, Ron was saying, I wish we had those mirrors, and I wish we had those mirrors too. I quipped that's Zazen, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Right, or yeah, and yeah, I mean, nothing more needs to be said on that point. It's just, I mean, and you're right, Ron, that's the goal, right? Or that's the, I think either Ellen or Ryushin said, we get that glimpse of non-duality from time to time. I've never gotten it, but I've certainly, relaxed my knees, and that's going towards it, right? So that's all. And the only comment sort of adjacent to that is, or the question is, how do we, a lot of this is, how do we recognize form exists, and how do we recognize form is empty and be good with that? I think that's a lot of what these lines are. It's like, don't go beyond that. Or maybe that's like a really good goal, is like, okay, what's beyond form and emptiness? But then a lot of these, stories are pushing back. Well, don't go beyond, or maybe there is a beyond, but how do you live in that form and emptiness field, recognizing it, but not being attached to it, just kind of like the lines that we're currently on, which is the mirror, and also, of course, I was thinking about the poem that the sixth patriarch responded to get his bowl, right? Which is, there is no tree, there is no mirror, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, because I really want to read this quote by Suzuki Roshi. Ron, why don't you finish this up?
Okay. Okay. So don't you see in front of the hammer and the stand, gold purified 100 times? I think this is talking about practice and a Master Ma's practice that is purifying is like, I'm thinking purifying is letting go of the self, or letting go of our attachment to ourself. And it's so hard, so difficult for us to do that. But practice, you're constantly challenged with that possibility, however that occurs to us. And so I think that's what they're talking about, but that's questionable. That's just how that's how I relate to it. It's somebody's practice they're talking about. It's basically about purifying the gold, or is letting go of our attachments.
Mm-hmm.
And under the scissors and do you want me to go on to the last line?
Yeah.
Okay. And under the scissors and the measure, a roll of silk. And I think that this is like, this is absolute and relative. The scissors and the measure are everything that we do with our thinking mind. We chop things up, we categorize, and we need to do that. It's necessary in this world to do that. However, there's a bolt of silk which is pure and unbroken, that's feeding this relative world, and it's seeing both sides. And I think that's what that line is getting at. Wansong has a comment about, after that line is, hairpins, paper clips, blah, 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 blah. The relative world comes from that pure silk. And just that transformation. I'm running out of words, so I'll stop.
Okay, but yes. Andrea?
Yeah, I was just gonna, Ron just made that point. I was just gonna say, our life is that roll of silk. It's not out there somewhere and holy and absolute. It is this very life. It is as we live it, is the raw silk.
Okay, so I really wanted to finish up with two little quotes that really relate to this koan for me. And one of them actually sounds a lot like what Julianne said. This is a kind of a modern day koan from a book called 49 Fingers, I think. Yeah, 49 Fingers. Andrea, do you want to read this one?
Oh, yeah. Remind me which number it is. 40.
Oh, I can't remember. I'll read it. Because you sent it to me, so I'm just going to read it because I have it right here.
That's Michael Wanger, right?
Yeah. But this is about Shogaku Okamura.
Shohaku.
So what?
Shohaku.
Oh, so Shohaku Okamura. It's not pronounced. It's not written that way. But so he was asked, "How are you?" Shohaku-san said, "I'm fine, but my back hurts." So that's a related koan. And then Andrew, did you want to look in the Book of Equanimity, or shall I read that?
Go ahead. I don't have it out.
Okay. So this is Suzuki Roshi, who, as I said, talked about this koan quite a lot as he was dying. And there are many, many talks where he talks about it, but this is just one of them. Ron, did you want to read this?
Okay. Well, if you got it right there, you can read it.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
When he was very ill and near the end of his life, Suzuki Roshi spoke to his students. We may believe that Zazen will make us physically strong and fundamentally healthy, but a healthy mind is not just a healthy mind in the usual sense, and a weak body is not just a weak body. Even though I die, it's all right with me. That is Buddha. If I suffer when I die, that's all right. That's suffering Buddha. No confusion in it. We should be very grateful to have a limited body, like mine or like yours. Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha. So thank you all for your wonderful and really insightful participation. I really have gotten a lot out of everybody's kind of contribution. And so thank you very much. And we'll see you at this time next week. And I'll just say the sort of the ending vows. Beings are numberless.